what started that? Were the Turks just on a rampage, or did the Armenians have anything to do with this? Was there something that went on before that to cause it?
Respectfully, I am not a historian, certainly not a historian of that issue. I've read some books. There are various opinions. So I don't, it's not an issue. I'm not venturing. The fact is, nobody challenges the fact that whatever the cause, there was a massacre. Whatever the cause, there were atrocities. So that's not in question. So why, when, how, whatever it was as horrendous and as horrific as is reported. So, you know, again, for us, it's not for us. I don't pretend to be historians. So again, we've never denied it. It's not a question for us to acknowledge. You know, it's coming to the Jewish people to acknowledge other people's tragedies. I understand, but I don't understand. But again, if it is to be, it was the Jewish people that resolved their relationship with Germany. Nobody else. Nobody else. And so it's the people who are the parties, whether it's 20 years or 50 years or 100 years, that's for whom it is to resolve, not for us.
Are there any other questions? Consul General. Please identify yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm Gábor Kalat. I'm Consul of Hungary, but I like your future tense. Thank you very much. Hungary will take over the presidency of the European Union. And as you mentioned, there is anti-Semitism within Europe. What can the European Union and its presidency do against that? Thank you.
Okay, questions about anti-Semitism in Europe, what can the European Union do, etc. Well, look, the most recent explosion of anti-Semitism in Europe occurred in the year 2000. Something that shocked a lot of people, didn't shock some of us who were watching it, because the old anti-Semitism was never really catharsized out. It was never purged out. Probably the country that did most in facing its history in terms of anti-Semitism was Germany. But the rest of Europe, some played victim, Austria played victim, or denied it, etc. And so the problem, and then came the new anti-Semitism, which was the anti-Semitism relating to Israel, what some have said, Israel became the Jew of the nations, in the same way that historically, whatever was permitted for everybody else was not permitted for the Jew. Now, Israel was singled out in the sense that all countries can, defend itself. Israel cannot. All countries can choose their capital. Israel cannot. What country's legitimacy is being challenged 60 years after its establishment? Israel. So that added to anti-Semitism in Europe. You had a human conveyor belt of some radical Muslims who helped. And so the biggest problem facing Europe was denial. That means European leadership denied that there's a problem, that there's anti-Semitism. I remember President Chirac coming to the United States with 4 Jewish leaders, and he said, there's no anti-Semitism in France, ask my Jews. Okay? 2 said yes, 1 said no, 1 said maybe. Okay? And we said, President Chirac, there's anti-Semitism in New York. So there's anti-Semitism in Paris. But as long as there was denial, they didn't do anything about it. And they didn't face it. Somewhere around 2004, 2005, the attitudes changed. And they changed because, I can tell you with Chirac, they changed. He woke up one morning to find out that the night before the police stopped an attack on a Jewish day school. And if, God forbid, if the police had not stopped it, France would have become a place where 900 Jewish children could have been, God forbid. So that changed his attitude. And he stood up and he basically said, there's anti-Semitism, we need to do it. And today France has probably the model country as to how to deal with it, in the sense that there's an inter-ministerial committee between Ministry of Justice, Education, Interior, there is police protection, Holocaust education is mandated, anti-Semitism is taken seriously, it is condemned whenever it rears its ugly head, etc. That's what Europe needs to do. Now, Europe started doing something else through the EU. And first of all, there's a recognition of the Holocaust Commemoration Day, which is the day of the liberation of Auschwitz, January 27th. It's been declared as a day of commemoration on the Holocaust. There are efforts to continue to teach, or to begin to teach, the Holocaust, not only as a Jewish tragedy, but as a universal tragedy in the sense that if you permit hate to reach to that level. Now, and the EU has had conferences on hate on the internet. It has translated some ADL materials on prejudice. We're engaged in efforts with some EU agencies to sensitize law enforcement. Police officers sometimes, if they come on the scene of conflict, can either become the problem or the solution. And if they don't understand prejudice, or they're prejudiced themselves, it makes it worse. So the EU can facilitate, not only as a voice, it's important to have a voice, but there's need for education. There's need for implementation of the resolutions which say, yes, there's anti-Semitism. And a lot of material needs to be translated, needs to be made available. Teachers need to be taught how to teach. So there's, I'll be delighted to give you a shopping list. But basically, there is today recognition that there is a problem. And European Union is dealing with Islamophobia as well, because that's a growing problem in Europe today. We're struggling with the issue of the Internet. Internet is both a magnificent vehicle for education, information, and interaction, but it also provides a superhighway for bigotry. The question is, how do you balance freedom of speech, freedom of expression, privacy? How do you protect it? We're struggling with it. The EU is a good forum. We have problems of conflict of laws, because there are laws in Europe which says you cannot sell Mein Kampf, or you cannot deny the Holocaust, but Europeans can buy Mein Kampf from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever. So we have issues to resolve. But again, the EU is a good place, a good forum to bring countries together. Under the EU umbrella, there's a conference this week in Turkey on Holocaust studies, which travels from country to country. So the answer is delighted that they finally recognize that the problem exists. It needs more funding, more attention, and I'll be delighted to sit with you or discuss it later.
Before Mrs. Glazier comes up to close out the program, we have time for one more question, and I'm afraid she won't do it if I don't give that question to her husband. So Mr. Glazier does have a question.
Thank you. You're a great guy. We're glad we have you here. But my last question, you said God had a discussion with Abraham. Your name is Abraham. Was it you? I believe so.
And the question is?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.